Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our last Housing, Land Use, Environment, Transportation Committee meeting of the year. And we're going to open this up by calling it to order and establish our quorum. So Peggy, please.
Good morning, Vice Chairperson Semidian.
Here.
Chairperson Arenas.
And I'm here too.
You have a quorum.
We have a quorum here. Okay, so we're going to move into item number 2, which is public comment. And this is an opportunity to hear from the public on items that are not on the agenda. So if you have the will to speak here in person, please fill out that yellow card and submit it to our clerk. Any yellow cards or online comments?
We have no speakers for public comment this morning.
Well, we're going to move on to item number 3, and this is approving the consent calendar. Vice Chair Semidian, do you have any changes?
If you're happy with the consent calendar as proposed in our current agenda, items 10 through 13, I would move approval, Madam Chair.
Wonderful, and I'm going to second that, and we'll ask Peggy.
Vice Chairperson Semidian.
Aye.
Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Awesome. Okay, so we're moving along, and this is, now we are moving into the regular agenda, and this is item number 4. What? Recognizing the distinguished career and public service of Supervisor S. Joseph Semidian. Sir, I'm going to start out by saying that I think you heard what I think of what you've contributed as far as I have shared this dais with you, and I've extended that the theme of answering that question of whose government in that reference that I made on the board. And I continue to believe that there's people in public service that answer that question every day. And you have such an illustrious career that you are who is government. And there's such beauty in providing that level of sacrifice and really a gift. No one really appreciates, or at least I don't think unless you serve in this way, you understand the level of sacrifice that you make in order to serve for the greater good. And so with that, I'd love to provide you with a parting gift, and thank you for your service here in this committee. It's just a small token of appreciation for your career, for your service, for your sacrifice, and for answering that question about whose government. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much, and my reciprocal gift is to let it go at that. Thank you very much.
Oh, gifts for everyone. This is Christmas. Okay, wonderful. Well, listen, I will ask members up here on our dais, our colleagues, to see if there's any comments, and I will start with Sylvia Gallegos. Ms. Gallegos, please.
Thank you very much. Of the folks assembled here, I think I've known Joe Semidian the longest. We first met in 1997, about 27 years ago. So I've had nearly 3 decades of opportunity to both watch and learn from your service these past decades. And in the words of the great philosopher Joe Jackson, you can't get what you want till you know what you want. And that's a callback, by the way, from his first term on the board, which he used more frequently. And it speaks to, in my mind, the importance of clarity of purpose and vision. And you use that to great effect. I think for me personally, the project that was the most meaningful, which I was not involved in, was your leadership on the adolescent acute psych facility. As you were learning from constituents that we didn't have such a facility here in this county, I too was learning the same thing from friends who were having children go through mental health crises. And so it was deeply personal, and I've always been indebted to you on behalf of my friends, dear friends, for your leadership on that. The most gratifying project for me was your ability to give us the political space to go after affordable housing impact fees that truly recovered the cost of building that type of housing. At the time, for those of you who were there, we faced fierce opposition from, of all people, affordable housing advocates. And we did ultimately have the board unanimously approve a fee level that recovered the cost from very low to moderate, and it was the highest in the area, and it gave the space for other jurisdictions to follow suit so we could finally, tackle that problem in a meaningful way. I'll close by expressing my deep appreciation of your understanding and capacity for storytelling, including memorable slogans such as "Don't chop the top" and "Full mitigation." Those are important because we're always trying to penetrate people's minds and make an impact, and you recognize that slogans do help tell that story. And lastly, I'll say, on that note, I have a gift here. It's a DVD. So both Supervisor Simitian and I both love movies, films. And I've run into them a couple occasions in the peninsula. And a couple of years ago, we were talking about this film called Living, which is a remake of a Kurosawa classic, Ikiru. And it's a story, in the remake, it's a story about a London bureaucrat. And I winced during the movie when I watched it because it involved the public works director and the parks director. And in essence, what happens in the story is that a man who, I think he's the public works director, learns that he's dying of terminal cancer. But that's not his biggest problem. His biggest problem is he's not living a life of meaning. And so there was this great reflection and recognition that it's so important to live a life of meaning. And those of us in public service can say that we do and make contributions that improve people's lives. So in the movie, what happens is that he takes it upon himself to work through the impenetrable London bureaucracy to champion on behalf of these housewives that were simply trying to get a local park built. And in the very end of the movie, you can see he was successful in doing that, and it reflects a lifetime of trying to simply improve people's lives. So I thought it was the perfect reflection of your work and tenure over the last many, many decades. And as I say, we're always here for you and everybody else, and I look forward to seeing you in a movie theater soon.
So, thank you. Good morning, Supervisor Simitian. So on behalf of the Office of the County Council, I present you with a puzzle of our office's seal. And so there is some thought behind this. So our work as legal counsel to the Board of Supervisors and county government requires us to figure things out and to put together the pieces of the legal puzzle to support in the execution of the board's direction. And since 2013, Supervisor Simitian, and I know before 2013 as well, when you were previously on the board, you have asked our office to put together many challenging legal puzzle pieces, and we have welcomed the opportunity to do so. And importantly, you have listened to us when the legal puzzle pieces don't quite fit. We wish you the very best as you transition out of county government service, and we thank you for your service to the County of Santa Clara and for your ongoing support of our office.
Thank you.
I'm going to ask, and start at the other end of the dais, if you please.
Good morning, Hillary Armstrong, Deputy Director for the Office of Supportive Housing. First of all, I want to extend KJ Kaminsky's best wishes, Supervisor Simitian. She is out of the office this week. And the Office of Supportive Housing is incredibly grateful to you for your longtime partnership and championing. There are many, many highlights, but at this point, we also have Consuelo Hernandez here who has a little something for you. So I'll turn it over to Consuelo briefly.
Thank you, Hillary. Supervisor Simitian, what can I say? It's been an honor. Your clarity, you challenge us to be better. I've been a public servant for over 20 years, and I have learned so much from you about what it is to tell a story, what it is to care about community, what it is to partner with different organizations, even when they're so different from you. I'm gonna miss you deeply. Thank you for making me a better public servant. Thank you for everything you did in North County to bring us together, to help people who are of less means, being a just driver for excellence. The first educator workforce housing project would not have happened without you. Getting ag worker housing on the map and partnering with Supervisor Arenas to actually make that happen, and we opened our first one a few months ago. None of that would have happened without you. As you know, in OSH, our love language is being a little goofy, funny, because the work is so hard. So we wanted to offer you a little gift, a card from us. We know that you love books as much as our nerdy people at OSH do. So it's a little mix of fun and rest. Rest is resistance as you enter the next chapter of your life. And The Sunset Years of Agnes Sharp. The life of older adults fighting crime, solving problems, because you've once said you have to mix it up and have a little bit of both, fun and things that are related to work. And we hope to see you in some way or another as we continue our work in North County. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Cross boundary. I'm so sorry, I didn't know my mic. Please, Edgar, go ahead.
Supervisor Smithian, on behalf of SEPA, we wish you the best in your future endeavor. And thank you for all of your advice and suggestions that you have given SEPA throughout my 2 years here at Hewlett and at the board, especially when it came to Vector. All of your ideas were put into place and really helped us advance and get more in touch with the community members in your district. So we thank you for your leadership, your advice, and your commitment to public service. We put together a goodie bag of different SEPA things that we hope you put into place. Are a little baseball card of our K9 Everest. If you go visit the county parks, you're taken care with some tick removers, some reusable straws, and other goodies that we have in here as a gift from us to you, Supervisor. So thank you for everything.
Thank you.
Supervisor Simitian, on behalf of Parks and Recreation, we want to thank you for your dedication of public service and leadership over the years. The many initiatives that you have supported, both large and small, have contributed greatly to the success of the department and all that it provides to the public. Personally, I've only had the opportunity to interact with you a few times here on the dais, but I've followed you from afar over the years and have a great respect and appreciation for your longstanding dedication to public service. On behalf of the department, we've brought a few items here, something to complement SEPA's thing. We actually have an annual park pass and a few other items. So we'll go ahead and present those to you.
Supervisor Simidian, Harry Freitas here. On behalf of the Roads Department, I'm speaking on behalf of all of our employees who have worked with you over the years. I want to thank you for your leadership, in supporting the issues that are being faced by people who use our roads, and also the way that our roads support your community as well as the community, at large, because it's a combination of people who live on those roads and people who drive on those roads and people who walk on those roads and people who bicycle on those roads, and I think you've thought about all of those users. Two issues come to mind. The Homestead Road Bicycle and Pedestrian Project, which, I was really impressed, I guess, to see the role that you played as a convener, and I think that's the exact word you used when we first met with the community, to get multiple, smaller cities on board with the need for improving this corridor for bicyclists and pedestrians, and particularly children who are trying to get to and from school safely. And your leadership on that issue, we're still working on that project, but we're making progress. And your leadership is the reason why that project even exists. And the second was your support of our efforts to respond to the damage caused by the 22 winter storms, which were, severely damaged roads in your community, which the community that you represented, which you didn't represent for a very long time, because it was a new district for you, I think, right after the storms. I also wanted to just personally thank Chris Zanardi of your staff. You really select staff members that are so effective at working with us in really providing coherent services and seamless the delivery of services and communication has just been a pleasure for us to work with. So our department has the ability to actually make signs. So this is kind of a traditional gift. I'll hold it up. And this is for you, Supervisor Simidian. I'm not sure of the decor in your house, whether or not this is going to look great above your desk, but it also works well outdoors because it's waterproof.
There you go. Thank you very much. Thank you.
Supervisor Simidian, I'm going to hold my comments for later because I have a bit of a loss of words at this time. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that says quite a bit. I know that the part of your messaging is to have a little bit of fun and a little bit of work. And unfortunately, I'm the bearer of bad news here. We're going to move on, but I'd love to check in with you and see if there's anything you'd like to say before we move on, or we can do that at the end, however you would like.
I think, Madam Chair, so we don't have to return to the item, I, with your permission, would just say thank you for the kindness. And what I would like to say is two things. The first is the movie that Sylvia Gallegos referenced, Living, is one I would recommend to you all. It's what some people would describe as a small film, but it is, in my view, really a touching reminder of the importance of the work we do. And not to put too fine a point on it, the work all of you do. And it's the nature of our political system that we push the elected officials out front, that we get some of the brickbats, but we also get the opportunity to stand and take a bow. And yet, truth be told, those of us in elected office depend wholly on the ability of the staff to actually deliver, to make the things happen. And to some extent, as Harry has indicated, that is our own personal staff, and I would be remiss if I didn't give a nod and a shout out to Chris Sinardi in my office, and previously Christina Loquist. But my entire staff, really, these are people who have played very important roles in the ability of my office to move the agenda. But that's also true of everybody at this dais. And I have been struck, and I have a few of you in mind, and I'll withhold the stories. But I have been struck through the years by the fact that my constituents and but my constituents owe many of you a debt of gratitude that of which they are wholly unaware, and they will never know your names. At least if you're lucky, they will never, they will never know your names. And I think of some of the important land use and housing work we've done here at this dais and on the board more fully. And you know, that work only happened because people here helped make it happen. And the multiplicity of folks who are essential to that, you know, we didn't give the clerk a shout out. Peggy, it's good to see you again. I will speak into the microphone as you have requested from time to time.
It's one of the many reasons we really like you.
Thank you. And, but I want to look at each one of you today and think about the ways in which my constituents have benefited from your willingness to wade in, to make good things happen, to keep bad things from happening, to keep the public interest front and center in the work that we do. So when you have a minute, I'm pretty sure that Living is available on streaming video, and you can put your feet up and take a few minutes to take satisfaction in the importance of the work that you do, we have done together, and hopefully you will do in the future. And please know, as you welcome the new members of the Board of Supervisors, that I leave acutely aware of the debt of gratitude that my constituents and I owe each and every one of you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, unfortunately, I'm gonna move us along to the next item. I'd love to just sit in this energy, this beauty and love that is expressed through gifts and words and messages, and just so much living that has happened throughout your career here at the county. So I'm going to call item number 5, which is our Santa Clara County Active Transportation Plan Draft. Welcome.
Thank you, Chair and Vice Chair. I want to introduce Chris Lamb, our Deputy Director, who's responsible for the development of this plan. The purpose of this report is really to update you on the progress that we've made since the last report to this committee, mostly about taking public comment, and let me let Chris just present those details to you.
Sure. Thank you, Harry. Chris Lamb, Deputy Director in Roads and Airports. This will just be a verbal report today, no presentation material. So if you remember, we came to the committee in September and gave a presentation on our active transportation plan titled Active Santa Clara. It's a report or a plan that's been in the works for several years now. And we are getting to the final stages. We did an early outreach program when we kicked off the project in 2020. And now that the draft plan is out, we've been doing another round of outreach, seeking comment on the plan itself. So when we presented in September, we were expecting to kind of wrap things up in October and November and come back to the committee here for recommendation for Board of Supervisors approval in early 2025. And this is really just an update that says we're taking a little bit more time to get, make sure that we get all the public comment that we can get, make sure that we're getting the plan right for the community, and that the dates are going to push out a little bit into early 2025. So where we've been over the last couple of months, we took the plan to the VTA BPAC on November 13th and presented to the BPAC. We also presented to our County Roads Commission on November 18th. We had the draft plan, which is attached to the staff report. That was posted with an online public commenting tool. We actually extended the open period for public comment through, it was open between October 28th and December 8th. We've received over 150 public comments from the community, so we're actively working with our consultant, Alta Planning, to go through each of those comments and provide responses to them. But at this point, we're probably looking at having a final draft ready in early 2025 that we would take again to the VTA BPAC, to the Roads Commission, and then again to Hewlett for recommendation for Board of Supervisors approval in probably the spring of 2025. So that's really it for the update today. It's again was really an interim update on some of the schedule changes that we had previously identified to the committee.
Thank you, sir. And we're going to move to public comment before we begin our conversation. Peggy?
We have two speakers in chambers. The first speaker is Jim Stallman. If you can approach the podium. You will have 2 minutes to speak.
Hi, I'm Jim Stallman. I live in Saratoga. I have a few more things to say than 2 minutes worth, but we could have this. I know that, Santa Clara County has been doing a lot for the people on the planet, but there's so many cities, communities, metropolitan areas that are doing good things with their heavy traffic arterials, and pedestrian and bicycle safety benefits from it. Yes, let's do it right. Thank you, County Roads, for taking another stab at this thing and getting some more public comment incorporated so we don't go in the wrong direction here. We don't want to lose this stuff. This is really good stuff in the earlier plans. It was put together by Don Cameron, Michelle de Robertis, and Ellen Talbot. I mean, it's just a stab in the gut to see this stuff being shit cans, excuse the terminology, in this current plan. That's one of my inputs, so I hope that gets incorporated, that we save this stuff. This is pragmatic. This is project specific. It was an eyebrow raiser to learn that this plan has already cost $500,000, and to think of the amount of sidewalk that could be put in for that amount. I know Joe Simidian appointed me to the Saratoga Streamside Trail Committee way back when, and we're still waiting for a connection over to Doyle Drive across Lawrence Expressway, just like they did at Mitty. So we have lots of opportunities. Let's seize them, and I hope for your support in that endeavor. Thank you.
The next speaker is Akos Sobosloy.
Between 1988 and 2008, county roads tried to eliminate bicyclists from expressways a total of 3 times and eliminate pedestrians a total of 4 times, but county roads lost all board votes. This is shown in my figure 1 that I uploaded. I have to refight the same fight over and over again. I don't get paid for this. Your highway engineers get paid to fight against existing board requirements and to waste everyone's time. Mr. Freitas spent $525,000 to buy custom propaganda to change 5-0 board votes that require bike lanes and sidewalks on both sides of the road. Mr. Freitas wants to throw away into the trash all the work that went into the 2003 and 2008 county expressway plans, each having a 2-year public input process. Mr. Freitas must comply with these plans. Instead, he first tried to censor them, but failed. It is now trying to eliminate them. He prevented entities that approved these plans from voting on his ATP, including city councils and the VTA board. Mr. Freitas ignored all public input on his ATP. It is presented to you today exactly the same as the day it was released, October 28. My and everyone else's comments were completely ignored. This board located many transit stations on expressways, including Caltrain, Light Rail, and BART. The only purpose of the ATP is to use the right-of-way of bike lanes and sidewalks for more car traffic. This ATP would be dangerous and needs prompt rejection. Thank you.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you, Peggy. I'm going to look to my colleague to see if there's any comments.
I think I've just asked the staff to respond to the extent that they think it's appropriate to what we've heard.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity. Certainly, I think there's a lot of advocates around the use of the roads, and there's lots of different opinions about how roads should be used. I would say that there's a fair amount of challenges with accommodating bicycles and pedestrians on expressways, and a lot of that has to do with really the speed on the expressways and our desire to allow all users to be as safe as possible on the facility. We are proud of the work that we've done. It is a complex system, and I'll share with you that having worked as a city traffic engineer in the city of San Jose for part of my career, there's a relatively homogeneous system of roads that supports urban environments. The county road system is very different than that. Hills, narrow, flat country roads, arterials, collectors, neighborhood streets, as well as things as large as expressways. So we think we've put together a plan that both coordinates with the various city bicycle and pedestrian plans, advocates ideas and concepts that will allow us to leverage future funding opportunities to build some of these ideas. And I can assure you that we are responding to every single comment. Right now, I have a matrix of 150 comments on my desktop, on my computer, that we're continuing to work through. So with regard to the comments stated here today, we're happy to continue to work with all constituencies and try to get to a plan that the Board of Supervisors can feel good about approving for our roadway network.
Thank you, Mr. Freitas. Okay, we are going to keep moving on this. Oh, sure,
I
absolutely.
apologize, Madam Chair. I know the only ask here is that we receive the report, but what I'd like to do is move that we take the recommended action, which is to receive the report, and ask staff to review the concerns that have been raised yet again, particularly with respect to earlier work which may not have carried forward if that is in fact the case, and with respect to what I'm going to call the multiplicity of users. And if I can get a second on that, I will speak just very briefly.
I will second that.
Thank you. This, of course, as was referenced, will be formally addressed by the next board with two new members. I will say, Mr. Freitas, to your point, I do think that it is a struggle to address what I'll call the multiplicity of contexts and environments in which we do our county roads work. But to me, it's an even greater challenge that what we used to think of as roads are now not only roads, they're bikeways, they're walkways, and the whole complete streets movement is built around this multiplicity of users. I do think that makes for a much tougher challenge. And of course, Madam Chair, that brings to mind a story. I remember, I should be embarrassed, but I'm not, reading T-2010, which was the transportation plan for 2010, which was advanced here in the county around, I think, the year 2000, because it was forward-looking. And there was a paragraph that struck me at the time, and obviously it stayed with me, that talked about the fact that bicycles weren't really a meaningful part of the transportation picture, with the possible exception of Palo Alto, which was hard to explain in the view of the writer, but perhaps the fact that it was a university town explained the fact that there was this quirky habit of people actually riding their bikes to work. I think it was 7%, which was not insignificant. It's a different world today. Here we are, from that reference point, a quarter of a century later, and we've got different notions about transportation and who should be able to access and use our transportation systems. So I do think that means you've got a tougher job when you blend the multiplicity of contexts and the multiplicity of users, and I would like to ask for that sort of review before the item comes back, so that when, to the greatest degree possible, when you come back to the full board, you can say, we've heard it, we've responded as we think appropriate, here were the decisions we made, the trade-offs that we thought were necessary. Thank you.
Thank you. I concur with you. There's a fine balance between what some of the public wants, and there's different perspectives on what should be integrated into safety measures to protect the different users of our expressways or of our streets, our roads. And I think we have to find the right balance. I'll leave it to those who are experts in their fields and the feedback to give us those recommendations. One of the things that I actually wanted to thank you is for listening to some of what the feedback that I provided, I think, back in September. And I talked about in my district we don't have the same number of incidents as maybe other districts do that cause that are on our roads, but what I do have is fatalities and severe injuries, and there's a difference between a more congested district like District 2, because you don't have that opportunity to go really fast, right? And in my district, you can, because the roads are very long and they're very wide, and we're not going to do anything about it because, eventually. And I think the city of San Jose, at least in the San Jose portion of my district, are doing things to narrow, and I know that's work that you began to do, Mr. Freitas, when you were back in the city of San Jose. and and it's getting carried out. And when we see something different, like bike lanes, some folks see it as anti-car, right, or just not just an inconvenience for those who are commuters. We are a commuter city and county, and so I think we have to just strike the right balance. And I think you'll learn what that balance is as you continue to listen to our community, as you continue to integrate some of that feedback. I know in the expressway that's in my district, there's a lot of high collisions, and it just unfortunately has, it's a long-standing issue with those incidents resulting in death. And so how can we best protect those who are walking and those who are biking and then those who are driving? So I look forward to having you do another round. I heard you loud and clear, Chris, about continuing to listen to residents. And so one of the things that I wanted to just contribute is on behalf of San Martin, because we are kind of the default government for them. They don't have a local government body that represents them. One of the things that's really important for them is the streets. And I know that there's, I think, bicycle recommendations in San Martin, Class 1 bike lanes, which was really great to see. Thank you so much for listening to my residents and continuing to do that. And they want you to continue to work with them, and hopefully what you could do is go back to San Martin and hear them once again. So it would be wonderful with this motion to maybe call out San Martin and South County residents on the streets of high priority, if you could. Would love to also provide you with a list of neighborhood groups and folks that you can tap into. I'm sure that you all have done a really wonderful job because we continue to see the integration of feedback. But if there's any additional groups that maybe you haven't crossed on your list, love to give you that feedback. Well, wonderful. Thank you so much. All right, so I think we're ready for that motion to.
Supervisor Semidion.
Aye.
Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All righty, we are moving right along. This is item number, is it 7?
6.
6. Well, there we go. Item number 6, annual report on ordinance code section C1-71, exemptions.
Good morning, Jacqueline Anciano, Director of Planning and Development, and with us today is Deputy Director Michael Alvarez. He is our building official and over our development services. He will speak to C171. It's a program that was approved by the board, and we have been working to not utilize compliance agreements as much as possible. So we have been working with applicants to bring them into compliance and only using our agreements when needed. So Michael, if you would, please.
Thank you, Jacqueline, through the chair. Yes, we're here to report back on the progress of the C171 amendments over the last year in 2024. These amendments were approved by the board in January of 2021. The goal is to reduce the number of compliance agreements that we need to process through the code enforcement team. During this past year, we had 65 permits that we issued to abate violations. 42 of those permits affected habitability, and 23 of those permits were demolition permits. Habitability permits are those that would be for the issuance of a roof replacement, a furnace, a water heater, water line repair, etc. Also, the code enforcement team processed 21 compliance agreements, and 6 of those compliance agreements were recorded. So looking at, since 2022, we're just seeing a steady increase 65 seems to be a pretty good number. That's the same number that we had last year, and it was an increase from 2022, where we issued 47 permits. Thank you.
Thank you. Did you want to add? No, okay. This is when I look up to like, oh, actually, no, public comment. Peggy.
We have no speakers in chambers, and one moment for the Zoom room. We have no virtual hands.
Wonderful. I'll go to my colleague, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I believe this is an annual report that I requested, and I am pleased that we can receive it. And frankly, I hope it will continue, just because I think it's a tough balancing act. And just so you know, it's still me on the one hand and on the other hand. You know, we want to have enough process to make sure that we get it right and that things are transparent in terms of expectations. You know, on the other hand, I do worry that sometimes, absent an approach like this, we can let form over function be a bit of a challenge. So parsing that, sorting it out, figuring out when we go this way, when we go that way, I think is a place where we do require staff judgment. It's why I think there is benefit to having a brief report on an annual basis. But I think the report we've got here and the underlying action it represents or reflects is really an acknowledgement that the goal should be to solve the problem. You know, whatever you get it done, and that candidly limited time and resources here at the county are better spent actually fixing the problem than tap dancing through the minefield of compliance agreements. So with that visual image, I'll move approval of the recommended action, which is simply to receive the report, but with direction for the annual report to continue until such time as formally waived.
And I will second that. Okay, I just have, and thank you, yes, sometimes I think it does feel like a minefield, right, for probably all parties involved. Thank you so much for the report. I really appreciate it. I know I heard it loud and clear. The effort is to resolve, to find resolution with our residents, to figure out what is it, how can we facilitate their compliance, right? And we don't want disagreements, but when we do, I'm wondering, what is the percentage in terms of completion, like a success rate? What would you say is the success rate when we actually enter into them?
I want to make sure I understand the question. The success, how many
How many actually,
compliance agreements do we do during the year?
well, how
Or-
many get actually completed?
Get actually completed?
Right,
I'm
within,
gonna-
and within a time frame that we would say would be successful, right? If it takes 15 years, I mean, I don't know if it actually would, but if you would tell me what you would determine as successful.
Okay, I'm going to see if I can have, I've got Michael Rossi, Deputy County Counsel, and Mary Ellen Luna. Are you able to respond to that? Okay, I think Michael can respond to that. Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning, supervisors. Good morning, Supervisor Arenas. I believe that since the implementation of the program, we've entered into dozens of compliance agreements. All of these compliance agreements are drafted by staff and approved by county councils to form a legality. Of those dozens of compliance agreements, since 2014, County Council has only been called upon to bring a civil action to enforce those agreements as under a breach of contract theory in Superior Court twice.
Wow.
There are several pending compliance agreements currently in various states of compliance. To your earlier point, sometimes it takes longer to complete those compliance agreements than we initially anticipate. However, the ability to enforce them by bringing a relatively simple civil action in Superior Court for breach of contract is a powerful incentive for those who enter into them to complete them. We are currently auditing all outstanding compliance agreements to determine compliance. Generally speaking, compliance agreements work in the time provided by the county for a property owner or other responsible party to complete them. However, there are some that require further action, and we have recently begun to review our inventory of compliance agreements to determine how many need some further action, either to amend those compliance agreements to bring them current, or those that probably need to be elevated to county council.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate hearing that there's only been twice the opportunity to have to, or not the opportunity, but having to elevate this to the next level. For some of those residents that may have encountered some economic restraints, and what mechanisms or what opportunities do we have to offer them resources so that they can comply? Is that something that if they're not compliant, is that kind of the main reason that they lag or delay in compliance?
If I may, through the supervisor.
Yes, absolutely.
There are various reasons why. Sometimes it's financial, and our ordinance gives opportunity for us to be flexible if there's fines that are that have occurred. We also our compliance agreements are voluntary compliance agreements, and so we work with the applicants and the property owners with regard to timeframes for when they can come into compliance. We try to be flexible with the property owners, and also that runs in line with if they have to secure land use entitlements, we're also flexible in that regard. We do have some resources that are available, but they're limited to the use that we can offer them. But we do have some resources, financial resources, and then we have an opportunity, if someone has a particular hardship, that they can submit requests to us that we can process relative to their circumstance. Because as I said, our desire is compliance, and so we try to work with applicants.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Thank you for answering all those questions. It is clear that we are not trying to be punitive, but we are hoping that there is collaboration and cooperation on behalf of our residents so that we can get this, whatever the item is, resolved. And so I appreciate it, and thank you for the additional information. I'm good, and I think now no motion?
Move approval of the recommended action, which is to receive the report.
Wonderful, and I'll second that.
Vice Chairperson Simitian.
Aye.
Chairperson Arenas.
I will say absolutely yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so much, gentlemen. I'm going to go a little bit out of order, and this is under receiving verbal reports. Actually, you know what? Can we? Can council tell me? Can we return back to item number 4?
Certainly.
Okay, wonderful. So I would like to ask Jack if there's something that you would like to add at this point.
Yes, I have gained my words back, Supervisor Simitian. I was at a loss of words. I wrote a song for you, Supervisor Simitian, and we are going to execute it. It is a song, yes, please come to the dais. It is sung to the tune of the 12 Days of Christmas. I am going to join the planning team. And I worked with your staff, Christina Zanardi, Christina Loquist. I was hoping she was going to be here, but I want to say thank you to you, Supervisor Smitty. When I came here in 2018, There were various times that you had conversations with me. And I appreciate those conversations. You were very candid. You allowed me to be passionate. You allowed me to be honest, and you never judged me. You mentored me in a way that, with a quiet strength and just your spirit of excellence. But there were some quirky things about you that I loved, and one of them was that Diet Pepsi. You always had about 6 a day.
I've
I
cut
watched.
back, by the way.
I watched. And then those little lifesavers, the white ones, you always had those in your pocket. These are just little things that I saw about you, but one thing that stood out about you, Supervisor Smidian, is your excellence to serve the residents that you represent. And so we're going to sing a little song for you. Yeah, and I have one printed out for you. Okay, hold on, okay? It's up here, right? The mic is up here. Okay. Okay, you guys ready? Okay. Okay. We'll start on that one. A second, and then we go down. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, one Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, 2 quarries and 1 community plan. On the 12th term of public service the county gave to me, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, a 1939 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, D5 press releases, a 1939 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, stakeholder meetings, D5 press releases, a 1339 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, 8 adjoining cities, stakeholder meetings, 5 press releases, a 1939 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, 900 office hours, 8 adjoining cities, stakeholder meetings, press releases, a 1939 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me, 10,000 site inspections, 900 office hours, 8 adjoining cities, stakeholder meetings, D5 press releases, a 1939 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 quarries, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the second term of public service the county gave to me,
Lehigh violations, 10,000 site inspections, 900 office hours, 8 adjoining cities, stakeholder meetings, D5 press releases, a 1939 use permit, 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 Corys, and 1 Stanford community plan. On the 12th, on the 12th year of public service, the county gave to me one teacher housing project, Lehigh violations, 10,000 site inspections, 900 office hours, 8 adjoining cities, stakeholder meetings, D5 press releases, a 1939 use permit. 1 million Diet Pepsis, 13 tips, 2 Corys, and 1 Stanford community plan. So Supervisor, we have a bound, signed Stanford community plan for you. And we thank you so much for your leadership and for your mentorship and for the man that you are.
Thank you all very much. This is, I believe, my last public meeting as a member of the Board of Supervisors, and to say that you have made it unforgettable would be an understatement. And I offer this next observation with affection and respect. Don't give up your day jobs. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Oh, my.
Thank you, staff. Thank you to the staff of the Planning Department, Planning and Development.
Gosh, it sounds like you really rehearsed that.
No, we didn't.
I was being kind.
Oh, thank you. That's okay.
No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. That was fabulous, fabulous. I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to return back to business unless you. Okay, it's a good thing. All right, so we are going to go back to item number 7, which is our supportive housing system in Santa Clara County and temporary housing, permanent supportive housing, and veterans housing programs report. Please, someone take it away.
Good morning, Chairperson Arenas and Vice Chair Simidian. That is an interesting act to follow, but I will do my best. I am Hillary Armstrong, Deputy Director with the Office of Supportive Housing, and we have a very meaty report for you today, so we'll try to give you some high-level updates and then leave time for any questions. The first slide, slide number 2, presents the overview of our overall community plan goals progress. This is a slide that you see every month, and I wanted to highlight that as of this report, we are at 85% of our goal of housing 20,000 folks by 2025. And one thing that I wanted to highlight is that of the households that were housed within the past 12 months, 1/4 of those were families with children. At the same time, we had over 4,000 folks who were assessed for the first time in the past 12 months, which is one of the data points that we use to track what we call inflow and really try to understand the needs in our community and the need for more housing. We are still struggling with inflow, although it has improved since the implementation of several of the community plan goals, and we are down to a ratio of, for every 1 household that we are able to house, 1.7 are seeking housing for the first time. And so that's something we're still working to close that gap. This month, we are going to highlight a few of our very large program areas. And so we have some data points to highlight for you, but we'll also be welcoming any of your questions about these programs. The first area we'd like to highlight is our temporary housing programs. And this slide shows our overall temporary housing program capacity, which is at about 2,700 total units that can house approximately 3,600 individual people per night. And we have the breakdown for you on this slide of the different program types that we are providing. And we wanted to also highlight that in the past year, around 8,000 people made up of 5,600 households participated in temporary housing programs throughout the county. The next slide shows the exit destinations by type for folks in different types of temporary housing. And a few things to highlight. I also wanted to highlight that the interim housing programs, as you see, have the highest rate of placement in permanent housing, and this is tied to the program model. This is something that we started piloting a few years ago of really making sure that we had connection for folks who are waiting for permanent housing placements in our system. And so you can see the outcomes of this have been very positive. I also wanted to highlight some of the demographic data that's in your packet on page 293 in Appendix F. Just a couple of high-level highlights about what we see for our temporary housing participants. The interim housing programs are about 1/4 families with children, so that's a program area where we're seeing a number of families. In our safe parking programs, we see about 43% seniors. So that is, something that we're looking at in terms of who's utilizing those services and helping us plan for the future and thinking about supportive services that can wrap around there. And for all program types, we do see that Hispanic, Latina, and Latino families and individuals make up the largest group of folks who are seeking those services. So that's something that we're tracking as well. I'm going to move on to our permanent supportive housing program highlights. On slide number 8, you can see our total permanent supportive housing capacity is at about 4,128 units, and it's broken up by project type here. And we see that a high level of enrollment, 94% of folks who are enrolled are housed, and the remaining folks who are enrolled are probably in housing search. They may be participating in one of our interim housing programs, and they're likely working with our client engagement team to get that housing search over the finish line. I did want to also highlight the outcomes for our care coordination project, which is our largest group of supportive housing kind of participants. We see really good housing retention among this group. As you can see, the chart on the left, we see 96% of folks who retain that housing for 12 months or longer, and it's still a really high rate, are housed for 12 months consecutively. We also, an important component of all of our supportive housing services is connecting folks with primary care. And a medical home is a model of primary care kind of focusing on the patient's needs and a patient-centered approach, and also a connection to behavioral health services. So for both of those categories, we see about 3/4 of our clients are being connected directly to those services through their supportive housing. I also wanted to highlight in your packet on page 294, Appendix G includes information on the self-reported disability and vulnerabilities of folks who are participating in permanent supportive housing. About 80% of those folks report having a mental health disability and having 2 or more disabilities. So that tracks with what we see in our permanent supportive housing model of services. And before I go to veterans, I also wanted to highlight some of the demographics for our clients in permanent supportive housing, and this is on packet page 296. And we'll try to pull up the demographics for these programs for our next presentation. We do see that the majority of the participants in permanent supportive housing, are 87%, are single adults, so a much lower rate of families. And we also see that they are at higher age ranges, and compared to our other housing services, a higher level of folks who are white in permanent supportive housing. And we're always kind of digging deeper in our data to better understand how we can reach our equity goals throughout our programs. So I wanted to wrap with an overview of our veterans programs. And this is really a success story in our system. And we're happy to say that we have had folks who are really, we see folks from different programs, but a vast majority through the VASH program who are definitely getting housed through our services. And this is one area where we do see outcomes for veterans tending to be higher or similar to the system-wide outcomes. So we do see veterans are in the red bars here on the graphs, and we see from transitional housing and overall more veterans who are exiting to permanent destinations. And we think this is tied to the number of programs dedicated to veterans, and this is one area of our system where there are more resources dedicated, and we see what can happen when we have dedicated resources, how we can get people housed. We also see, in terms of returns to homelessness within 2 years after exiting to permanent housing, it's generally lower for veterans than our total households, although there is one data point in emergency shelter that we're trying to unpack and understand more about. And finally, this slide really shows both our success story and kind of some new trends that we're seeing. So the green bars are the number of veterans who have been housed, placed in permanent housing each month. And the colorful bars are the number of veterans who are being assessed for housing for the first time, which we call inflow. And so you can see this is one area in our system where we have been consistently housing more veterans than folks who are becoming homeless for the first time. However, you'll see in recent months some increased inflow, and we've reached out to our partners at the VA to try to understand more. We think that there's a combination of economic factors. Folks are reporting that they've lost jobs or fallen on other economic hardships. We've seen some families that include a veteran member of the household in that group, and we've also had some additional targeted outreach, which can always increase inflow because we're going out to find folks who are in need, and then that increases the folks who are being assessed for the first time. And our next slide shows some data that we have on the self-reported disabilities of unhoused veterans. And you can see about 77% of those folks do have some self-reported disability, the highest being substance use and mental health disabilities. And you'll also see kind of the level of need for folks. These are veterans on our master list, which is a list that we work with the VA on to make sure that we are really individually understanding the needs of every unhoused veteran out there by name. And those folks who have been assessed on the master list fall about 44% in permanent supportive housing and about 44% in the rapid rehousing range. So we do see kind of a split among the levels of need. And finally, we did want to share the demographics of the unhoused veterans that we see in our system. And you'll see that a lot of folks are male, about 91%. And there's a variety of race and ethnicity, but a little bit similar to our permanent supportive housing, we do see more white individuals than in other categories of our housing programs. So we wanted to highlight that for the committee. And with that, I'm available to take any questions that you might have on this very dense presentation. So thank you for bearing with me.
Thank you so much. Before we begin any conversation, I'm going to look to Peggy to let us know if we have any callers.
We have no speakers in chambers, but we do have one virtual speaker. Our next speaker is Paul Soto. Please accept the unmute to begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes.
Yes, can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. One of the things that I'd like to talk about is the 43% seniors, and correlate that to the primary care physicians that you are able to connect them with while they're housed, that is an excellent statistic to have. That's something to be proud of, because the being on the street for an extended period of time, a couple of years, naturally, when the person segues into permanent supportive housing, the impacts of that kind of lifestyle is going to start surfacing. So that's excellent news. What I found that was absent from your report, though, is an equity metric. And I'm going to keep on this topic because it's that important, is that you do not have a racial equity metric within the permanent supportive housing, temporary housing, that would create an equilibrium, and we wouldn't have that statistic of 80% of the people that are in the program are white. Now, the people that are experiencing the poverty and the generational poverty and the depressed income levels are the Mexicans, are the Central Americans, and the South Americans. And so my challenge to you and my question to you is, number one, why is there not an equity metric within the context of permanent supportive housing? Because I don't think that it's something that, is just kind of nice to do. It's something that needs to be integrated and incorporated as a working part of how housing is assigned. Thank you.
And that concludes our speakers.
Thank you. Before I ask my colleague if he has any comments, I would like some response, just so that our public understands the process and how equity fits into.
Thank you, Chairperson Arenas, and thank you to the member of the public for the comment. We are absolutely committed to racial equity metrics and building those into our system, and the point is very well taken. We have some excellent work that has been done. There was a study by Destination Home around racial inequities in our system, and we are constantly looking at the data. But I will say for 2025, we are, with the support of the Office of Diversity, Equity, and Belonging, working on launching our racial equity action team in the Office of Supportive Housing, which we're really excited about. And I think with the, having already kind of a robust data team that is very focused on equity and metrics, and in combination with our 2025 to 2030 community planning process that will launch next year, I think this is the moment where we'll be able to deliver on having those metrics more laid out in our regular reporting to the public rather than, kind of looking to separate reports.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that. Looking to my co-chair.
Thank you, Madam President. Just for process purposes, I'm happy to move the recommended action, which is actually items A through D on item 7, I believe. And in speaking to the motion, I'll be brief because most of what I have to say I've said before, and I think people on this dais know it. I think the great challenge that the report highlights is that when people talk about the homeless or the unhoused, the implicit suggestion is that that's somehow a monolithic group. And in fact, what we know from the work the county and others do is that the causes of homelessness are many and varied, and the folks who fall into that category each have a different story, to put it simply. And the reason I think that bears repeating is because it should, and it does, affect the nature of the services we provide and the way we provide them, which is to say, this would be a whole lot easier if there was a solution. There isn't a solution. If there were, we'd just do that thing. But in fact, what we discover is that because the folks we're trying to serve are falling into homelessness for a variety of different reasons. That means the response has to be varied as well, and that's harder. So I think it's tough for folks in the community, certainly, and certainly folks in our own organization sometimes, you know, whether it's safe parking or interim housing or emergency shelter, cold weather shelter. There's a tendency to say, well, that doesn't really solve the problem. Well, no, but every little bit helps, and the hope and expectation is that as we cobble together all these various programs and services, we've got a big picture, here's a word I don't use very often, holistic approach in terms of addressing the need that's out there. So, Madam Chair, I'm sharing some of these thoughts again because I thought it was a little bit painful to watch the debate in San Jose recently about what I'll characterize broadly as interim solutions versus permanent solutions. And you know, it's unfortunately, it's not an either or in my estimation. It's you got to do both. And you know, if we could snap our fingers, wave a wand, whatever other cliche I could trot out, and have the permanent housing available, sure. But in the real world, it doesn't work that way, which means we're going to need some interim solutions for people who have a crisis of one sort or another right here, right now. And I just, I want to commend the county, but I also want to exhort the county to keep that frame of reference in mind in the years ahead, because I think it's too easy to get sidelined by the trend of the day. Oh, it's all about this, or no, it's not all about this or that. It's about all those things taken together, dealing with a much larger and more complex set of multivariables. So thank you. I'm happy to move the recommended action, and if you will second, Madam Chair.
Absolutely second that.
Thank you.
And then just building off your comments, there isn't one solution because we as human beings are complex and have formed very complex lives that involve a lot of different people, and for different reasons we may become unstable enough that we don't have a roof over our heads. And when we have rapid rehousing as a tool to help folks get back under a roof and go into permanent supportive housing, I think there's some steps that, or at least some support that needs to go along with that. And so I'm wondering about those folks who may have some of the chronic health issues that are pulled, you know, that are not pulled, excuse me, but that are served through our department and find themselves now in permanent housing. How do we help with that transition?
Thank you, Chairperson Arenas, for the question. Just to clarify, you're asking for folks with kind of chronic or complex health conditions in permanent housing, how we're supporting them.
Permanent, and let me just give you a little bit of background. I know that there were some folks in Morgan Hill with a new affordable housing complex that were having a bit of a difficult time integrating, and there were issues that impacted their immediate neighbors that were enough that I think there was an eviction that happened for a couple of folks. And so because of that, you know, they find themselves probably unhoused once again. And so I wonder if there was something that could have happened in between, or some level of support. Obviously, this is a mixed complex, and so it's not providing the wraparound services that other complexes or other housing could have offered these folks. And so how do we set them up for success? Because it is a vast difference, right?
Sure, and thank you for the question, Chairperson Arenas. So we, regardless of whether a site-based location is 100% permanent supportive housing or is a blend or rapid rehousing, permanent supportive housing, and other affordable housing, they have site-based services for all of the households that are enrolled in the permanent programs, rapid rehousing or permanent supportive housing. And, so those include case management, connection to physical and behavioral health services, and property management, working with residents to understand, the requirements of living in supportive housing, any housing. And I think that's one of the big things that we emphasize as well, is that this is housing. And so we both expect our residents to learn kind of the norms and requirements and responsibilities of being a tenant, but we also, don't impose things on supportive housing residents that we wouldn't impose on other residents. And so I think that's an important factor. That being said, we recognize that folks do need extra supports, and so, I think it's a little bit like the Swiss cheese of we have a lot of different supports that are offered to try to kind of catch folks. But I do think there is work in our system around mobility when maybe it's not the best placement for a particular family or household. People are complex, and you and I don't always, mesh with our neighbors or our own housing situations. And that is something that we're really working on as a system to try to build more mobility within permanent supportive housing placements. And also, if folks are maybe ready to drop down a level but need some level of support. So those are kind of the complexities that we're trying to build in as our system matures. And, to your point, if folks are in supportive housing and evicted, it's not the end of the road for them. We are still working with them, first of all, to try to avoid the eviction, to try to find them a placement that is a better fit, and to really kind of pull all of those pieces together. So it's complicated work, and it requires all hands on deck.
I appreciate that, and thank you for that. I don't know if there's any steps in between before they actually get onto the property to help, and I'm sure that there's some level of preparation. These are the rules, but there's more to it than just reading off rules and learning or agreeing that these are the rules you're going to live by if you so want to stay here. So in anticipation of that transition, is there some steps that you take in between?
Absolutely, and our client engagement team is really built around this. It is our team of folks who are working with members of the community who are unhoused and who are on our community queue. And, as we're waiting for their housing placement, they're getting them document ready, making sure to help them gather all their documents, all of that complex information, but really also, helping them get ready to move into a permanent housing location. And for some of those folks, we are able to also enroll them in one of our interim housing programs, such as Willow Glen Studios on Pedro Street, where they receive wraparound case management. There's 24/7 staffing, and it really is kind of that stepping up into permanent supportive housing and doing a lot of that pre-work. We HUD through a special NOFO about 2 years ago, focused on unhoused communities and unsheltered homelessness. We received additional funding to expand that client engagement team. So we've had more folks joining the OSH team on that front, and it's really an important phase, like you identified, before folks are actually placed in housing.
Thank you. When was the addition of the this team, or how many people?
Yeah, it was, I think we went to the board in October of 2023. I can confirm that. But we were able to add 15 positions through this funding in OSH to this team. So it's really, like, you come to the OSH offices and we're meeting with clients day in and day out, helping them get ready for this housing.
That is music to my ears, no offense to the music that we heard earlier. Okay, so I am going to just ask one last question about the barriers to permanent supportive housing for individuals who are leaving custody, who might find themselves ineligible, right, or undocumented, and that doesn't allow them to be in federally funded housing options. And so what are they doing? How are we supporting them?
Thank you for the question, and we have some information in the write-up that we provided today about those barriers. And this is an area where we do have some gaps in our system due to some of the federal funding requirements. And so I think it's a matter of, as you already identified, some of those barriers include, whether folks have a particular conviction. It's very specific type of conviction that might disqualify them from some of the federally subsidized housing. And then, of course, we're all always mindful of making sure that we can seek alternate funding sources for folks who don't have documented immigration status and might not be eligible. I think there, in this current environment that we're going into, some of our federal advocacy avenues might be on hold for a little bit, but I think what we are doing is working very closely with the reentry, the Office of Diversion and Reentry Services. We, have OSH staff who are there every day, meeting with folks, assessing them, and also, based on those interactions, can kind of inform our system of those gaps that they see. And I think really it's going to take getting creative. And some of the folks leaving custody do have some substance use needs, and so really working with our partners in behavioral health to explore those options. And again, it's kind of one of those, like, every individual has a little bit of a different situation, but making sure that we as a county are not siloed in our response.
Perfect. Thank you so much for that additional information. And I'm going to ask Peggy to.
Vice Chairperson Semidian.
Aye.
Chairperson Arenas.
Thank you. Yes.
Motion carries.
And thank you. Thank you for the report. Thank you for all of the really important work that you're doing, especially as the seasons are getting colder and wetter. It's so important and so vital, so thank you so much. Okay, we are going to keep moving, and this is, I think, the last item, which is our item number 8. These are a verbal report on agricultural worker housing work plan. Take it away, Ms. Gallegos.
Good morning, Sylvia Gallegos, Deputy County Executive. I wanted to use year end as an opportunity to discuss the wide breadth and scope of work we've done to support ag workers. And so let me highlight many of these you're already familiar with and frankly participated in, but it's useful to, in one setting, learn and appreciate all of the things the county is doing. So, as you know, under the leadership of the Consumer Environmental Protection Agency, we continue through the Ag Commissioner and other supporting departments survey the needs of farm workers in Santa Clara County. Those needs may change radically in 2025 with the new administration. We are in the midst of our permit transformation process for land use permits and building permits, and I believe you too, Supervisor Arenas, were interviewed by Barry Dunner Consultants when we're trying to spend our time now learning our as-is state and opportunities for improvements. It's a very intensive effort, and we're deeply immersed in it now. They're working on preparing the initial assessment of our current processes, and then we're going to embark on the time-intensive process of making those improvements. With respect to housing projects, as you know, and you participate in this event, we had the grand opening on November 20th of Royal Oak Village, 72 units designated for affordable, including 30 designated for ag workers. Additionally, through the leadership of this committee, the county executive did establish in the recommended budget a ag permitting ally position. So we've gone through extensive work to ensure that the job specifications capture the unique dual roles of this position. I've asked Barry Dunner, consultant, to review it as well, as there are other jurisdictions that have deployed allies or ombudspersons. So our hope is to post quickly in January, begin interviews at the late spring, and ideally appoint someone to this role in the May or June timeframe. Under your leadership, we did get AB 3035 under Pellerin, signed by the governor, which, as you know, raises the housing unit cap for development from 36 to 150, and it extends through this pilot in our county and Santa Cruz County, extends the reach of the Robert Rivas prior legislation. We also, through the Agriculture Resilience Incentive Grant Program, known as RE, awarded $200,000 to 12 small farms to implement climate-smart practices. We worked with USDA to obtain $750,000 in additional grant funding to expand the reach of that program. Through our Ag Liaison, through the UC Cooperative Extension, we worked to help a grower with permits for 20-plus ag worker housing units and assisted other farmers with permits. And this, I think, is relatively new. The Planning and Development Department, through a principal planner, led the development of the Bay Area Regional Ag Plan Framework with a 60-member working group. I'm reviewing the plan and hope to bring it to the board in the first quarter of 2025. We also, as you know, at a recent board meeting, amended the ordinance code to establish the farmland security zones. And we presented the administrative guidelines with respect to how that program works. As you'll recall, it allows greater tax benefits than the Williamson Act program in exchange for a longer-term contract to keep prime ag land in production. So again, I just wanted to present these so you can see that broad scope of work we're doing to support both farms in Santa Clara County, but also ag workers. Thank you.
Thank you. And actually, I want to, if it's okay with my colleague, begin with some response. I have had such great feedback from folks, especially in the south part of our county, extending their gratitude and beginning with the recognition of the need, right, and the progress that has been made so far. And so that really, in the spirit of Supervisor Simidian's comments, that a lot of the work is done by the body that is here and the teams that you all represent. And so I'm really grateful, not only for this report, but for all of the work that really it has been done so far. And so I'm absolutely grateful to it, for it. And I mean, I just don't know which one to like highlight. They're all really just excellent work. And you know, the bill at 3035, I was just in a gathering last night, and I saw Mary Agrone, who's Councilmember Dave Davis's chief of staff, and she was telling me she's going to transition to Assemblymember Gail Pellerin's office, and that, you know, the Assemblymember was so pleased with the work that we've done with her that she's asking us to let her know if there's additional work and additional priorities. And, you know, there's a very small window in the next couple of weeks. And so this is a tribute really to the work that you and your team have done. And I, of course, Vicki, who's in chambers, as well as Patrick McGarity, who's in my office, have worked together with your team. But I am very well aware that a lot of the progress happens because there's leaders like you. So thank you so much. This is the best way to end my second year as a supervisor. Hopefully it adds a little This is just the cherry on top. I mean, today you've had so much recognition, Supervisor Simidian, and I know that a lot of the work that has been produced, including the farm worker housing, because you never allowed for it to be forgotten. And it was very, very clear to me when, I think it was on our first meeting together, that you pointed out, that we hadn't progressed as much as we wanted to. And so I'm absolutely grateful for your leadership. There's always people who are shepherding some of these priorities, and especially for our farm workers that are easily forgotten. As a stakeholder, as a resident of this county, I think most people are surprised that we still have agricultural land. And so to even have agricultural workers be mentioned is something that is just not recognized. So thank you so much for both of you for that. Thank you, Chairperson Simidian, for that. But of course, Ms. Gallegos, for the work that you've completed so far and for this report. So thank you. And is there any comments? Go ahead, Chair. Vice Chair.
I'm happy to move the receipt of the report, just for the record, and I will only say thank you to staff. Thank you to you, Madam Chair. Your memory is good. I actually had an interaction with constituents that prompted me to do a referral. I think it was 3 or 4 years ago now. And, but, shout out to you, Madam Chair, for turbocharging that effort, if I may use that phrase. And, it's a reminder, and I will smile when I say this, that the staff can only follow board policy if board members and the board as a formal body are clear about what board policy should be and what our board priorities should be. So we need to do our job by articulating in a formal and appropriate way, hey, this matters, we got to make progress. And then we look to the staff to make that real, as I said earlier. So I think the last observation I will make is there are some problems that take us by surprise that are new or suddenly developing. I'm thinking of the pandemic, rather obviously. One day life seemed normal, and the next day it did not. This farm labor housing problem is a long-standing one, and it's one where, frankly, I think we have no excuse to say, gee, we didn't know, or that's a new issue. I actually had the privilege of doing some work in San Mateo County with then San Mateo County Supervisor Anna Eshu on farm labor housing on the coast side of Half Moon Bay, and yet, and it resulted in 160 units of affordable housing along the coast side. 3+ decades later, in a tragic shooting, people were, quote, reminded, and in some cases for the first time realizing that the need was there, and it was dramatic, compelling. So this is one where, as I say, I think we're pretty clear on the nature and extent and the long-standing nature of the need, and I am pleased to see that we've engaged more fully, and I hope that we will continue to engage as a county, and I appreciate your push on this one. So keep pushing is my exhortation, not that it's needed. Motion is to receive the report.
Thank you, and I'll second that.
Before the vote, we do have one speaker on the item.
Oh my gosh, yes, absolutely, Peggy.
Our next speaker is Paul Soto. Please accept the unmute to begin speaking. You will have 2 minutes.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
We can.
Thank you. Paul Soto from the Horseshoe. As a proud son of a campesino that was raised in Sasipuedes, and a mother and a grandmother and an abuelita with tias and 18 cousins that went to 33rd in San Antonio in 1943. They experienced everything that John Steinbeck articulated in those two articles, dubious battle in California and starvation under the orange tree. And so I agree with Supervisor Simitian. There are certain things that have not changed. They haven't changed. And what is not changed is the willful and deliberate neglect of the respect that is due to the campesinos and the farm worker, and the workers in the McDonald's, and the workers in the motels. And so there is I don't think that we should be very cavalier about that, because when Dr. Sarah Cody stated that racism is a public health issue, she was absolutely correct, because what it does is it creates deficits in the capacity for people, the Mexicanos and the farm workers and the people that are working in the restaurants and the motels. It reduces their capacity to propagate their lines through the generations in the city. It creates a deficit in that capacity. So racism truly is a public health issue. And that is why I push for housing. Before I close, I would like it if Supervisor Arenas, Supervisor Allenberg had stated clearly that she wanted a dollar sign placed on the potential housing that was going to go up. I would like to know if that was done, because there was a line item and it was blank. And it was at the capital investments meeting about 6 months ago.
And that concludes public comment. I was going to take a vote.
You
There it
were,
is.
and I know that it's not traditionally appropriate to, because we're not, we went out of order actually on this item. So I just want to let Mr. Soto know, I'm not sure what that item that he was referring to. I don't know if anybody on the dais recalls or can answer that question. But maybe what I can ask is my team to do a follow-up on that. And thank you for your words, Mr. Soto. I think it's very apparent that everybody here who is going to vote, the two of us who are going to vote, are very deeply moved by our farm workers in this item. And so thank you for sharing with us your story, your history. I appreciate it. Okay, so we're going to vote on this item when my vice chair returns. And since that is his last day, he can delay however he pleases.
Vice Chairperson Simitian.
Aye.
Chairperson Arenas.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Okay, I lied by saying that we were on our last item. We have an additional item. This is, hopefully we can get this going really, really quickly. I'm going to encourage everybody to take just short summaries of item 9, which is our department activity reports. And we can start this time with Ms. Anciano.
Thank you. I'll be very brief. We are working diligently and hoping to get our housing element certified. We have submitted it to HCD for review. We have 3 other elements that we're working on: environmental justice, health and safety, circulation. We have pivoted. You've heard me speak to our people-centered services. We're building that program out. We are also looking at our work plan for 2025, and it will include trying to fill our vacancies. And we are increasing we have just increased our capacity in our code enforcement team, and so we're very excited about that. And that's all I want to say. Have a nice holiday.
Oh, wonderful. You too. Go ahead, Mr. Freitas.
Thank you. On the maintenance side, we're getting ready for winter, doing a lot of pre-work in the field, getting our roads and storm drains ready, and inspecting features that are going to take care of stormwater runoff. And then on the capital side, we have 4 kind of large capital projects going on right now. We have 2 resurfacings on expressways, and we have 2 bridges under construction in South County. Both projects will proceed over the winter, but albeit at a slower pace, and all 4 projects will proceed over winter, albeit at a slower pace. And that concludes my comments.
Thank you. We're just going to keep going down the road. Mr. Aguilera.
Good morning, Joe Aguilera, Acting Director of Parks and Recreation Department. Parks Annual Fantasy of Lights event began December 7th and 8th. It was a huge success with the walkthrough event occurring that weekend. For the first time, we had a drone show at the event, which was very popular with attendees. Both events that weekend were sold out. For the first time, staff conducted a neighborhood naturalist program in both English and Spanish at the Mexican Heritage Plaza. The program introduces participants to natural history with an emphasis on geology, native plants, and wildlife. With the support of the California Outdoor Equity Grant Program, staff are also working in partnership with the City of San Jose to bring programming to several local communities, including Seven Trees and Mayfair. These are just some examples of the department's continued efforts to provide mobile programming to youth and adults in the county's under-resourced communities. Finally, in January, the department will host its 5th Park Ranger Academy. This will be supported by 2 other local agency recruits who will participate in this cohort. Thank you.
And Madam Chair, I can't resist observing that the drone show was apparently viewed with pleasure all the way back east in New Jersey. So good for you. That took some doing.
Oh, was that what New Jersey was looking at?
Apparently so.
I heard about that.
We now have a plausible explanation, at least.
Plausible, very plausible. Thank you, Mr. Aguilera. Go ahead, Mr. Nolasco.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Supervisor Smitty, and Edgar Nolasco, Consumer Environmental Protection Agency Director. I'll have one brief update. Really happy to share that we've entered in a partnership with Valley Health Foundation to be our fiscal agent for us to start and continue an animal services donation endowment. Thank you to that. We are now have the ability to take in stock donations, and we recently just received 30 Google shares from an animal lover, which we weren't able to process before, and that has a value of about $5,000. So now it's opened up to new opportunities to increase our donation funds and continue delivering excellent services in our Animal Services Center.
That's fabulous. I think this is like a theme. You should have a theme. Let's see who can
Well, I just got to thank our Deputy County Executive Gallegos, because it's been her sort of leadership putting this together, and we're finally finalizing this.
Nice. Wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Go ahead,
Good
Ms.
afternoon. Hillary Armstrong, Deputy Director for Office of Supportive Housing. We have a few updates for you on our crisis and emergency response team. The Mountain View Cold Weather Shelter Program has 28 women staying there, and all openings are filled on a daily basis for that program. And thank you to Supervisor Smidian for your leadership and support. The North County shelter in Sunnyvale is transitioning to families. They can now accommodate 31 families, and we have 27 enrolled with intake scheduled today to fill those recently vacated rooms. They've also held a series of holiday events. Last night, they had the Sharks Foundation players and Sharky at the shelter. And the Ochoa Cold Weather Shelter Program in South County opened yesterday and moved in 34 of the 35 families they have capacity for, and the last move is scheduled. We also wanted to flag that OSH staff, including both emergency preparedness and crisis response, will be working throughout the holidays in continuing to monitor the weather. And if we reach the weather conditions to activate an inclement weather event that will expand temporarily our shelter capacity and the hours of the Here For You hotline, we will do so. And county libraries will also be available to open if needed as warming centers. And the other jurisdictions are all in constant communication, and through the Office of Emergency Management's website, there are countywide updates regarding cold weather.
Thank you so much.
I also would be remiss if I didn't let you all know that we were very successful in receiving tax credits for 3 of our projects, including Distal Circle, the first all-affordable housing project in the city of Los Altos. This is huge, as our tax credit rounds have been very competitive lately. And on Distal Circle, again, in tribute to Supervisor Smitty, and thank you for your leadership and commitment. We also learned that Cooser Apartments in San Jose and 525 North Capitol, also in San Jose, were awarded tax credits this round. And at the North Capitol site, Vegilution, the wonderful community-based organization, will have space on site. Thank you for bearing with my additional updates.
Oh, those are fabulous. Thank you so much. I don't know if there's any comments for my co-chair. All right. Well, listen, one of the things that I forgot to mention earlier, this is returning to you, Supervisor Simidian, is a very important item that we Brown acted on, and this is a policy that looked at reviewing how to reduce barriers to early breast cancer screening. And I don't know that I ever said this to you. This was for diagnostic screenings. At that time, my sister had just finished her breast cancer journey, and it was something that just really touched me in a way that it was just a very meaningful policy. A lot of the policy that we focus on obviously has meaning to us. But I want to just publicly thank you for continuing to push on, like you said earlier, push on a lot of different items, and that is something that I was absolutely grateful to you, that you continue to highlight for all of us. So thank you. I hope that today, as your last day in Hewlett, I've got to say that this has been an absolute just tribute to Supervisor Simidian, and I just want to thank everybody on the dais for making that possible for him. I think that this is just reflective of who you are and the work that has led you to this point, that merited a street name, a song, a puzzle, books galore. And so I just want to say thank you for your service, sir.
Thank you. Everybody's been exceptionally kind. Thank you for the work you do, as I said before. Thank you, Madam Chair. And let's not forget the tick repellent. My wife is hoping I'll be outdoors and a little more active now with the change. Until that time, I have boxes to pack, and so may I respectfully suggest we adjourn.
This Hewlett meeting and committee meeting is adjourned until next year.
Thank you so much, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Happy holidays and Merry Christmas.